Hello everybody, today I'll be doing a tutorial on collision detection, which will be using a rectangular collision. So to give you an example, I drew something very quick in Paint. We'll be able to define a collision, a rectangle, but for example, we want to have more power over it than just do a collision around the image, or the crop of the image if it's cropped, because you could still have a lot of white space, and sometimes you want only collision in certain points of an object. So, for example, we want to be able to move x and y of the collision, and width and height, change it even dynamically. So you'll be able to define collision, for example, like this, even though the image is like this, or you could even do it like this, or this. Like you could even have it so it's outside of the image. Oops. Like for example, like here. I don't know why would you want that, but we want to have a lot of power over it. So whatever we'll be creating in future, we can, the more options you have, the better. Okay, so we have the trees, and as you can see, they are in a little bit different positions, and that's because I didn't save in the last tutorial. I didn't press F11 to save, so I had to redo them. So yeah, and my character is walking a little bit faster because I increased the position, the speed, and here. So you can change it here if you want to. Probably creating a variable speed would be best way to do that, but for now we're just gonna concentrate on the collision. So let's create a class by going obviously here, add class. And now we can just call it CCollisionRectangle. CCollisionRectangle. And it's gonna create collision rectangle .h.cpp. Alright, so we have collision rectangle. Now what we're gonna do is create a private SDL2 collision rect. Okay. And we should remove that and just put it in here with lowercase. Okay. So it knows what SDL is, and we'll simply just include the .h file here. Okay, so now we want to create the rectangle with one line. So we'll just create collision rectangle, and we'll just pass in the values, and we'll just set it up for us. So we pass in all those 4 values. So we're gonna add the collision dot x equals x, collision dot y equals y, collision dot w equals w, and collision h equals h. Okay, so now we're going to create another constructor, because if you don't, first of all, it will complain eventually that you don't have default constructor, so create this. So if you get error, there's no default constructor, yeah, you have to create a constructor without any values as well, but we will need it just in case we want a sprite without a collision. And we're going to create a function called set rectangle, and it's gonna take those values as well. Okay, set rectangle. So void CCollision set rectangle, and takes those values. And what we're gonna do is just cut this and paste it here. And we're just gonna do a set rectangle x, y, w, h here. And now we need to add this default constructor, which we just pasted here. Just copy and paste this constructor, delete everything, and just pass in zeros. So the collision will be all zeros, so there won't be any collision if you don't pass anything. Okay, so we have this, and we finally need getter and setter for the. No, we have already setter. We can set. We need just getter, so just get rectangle. Get rectangle, and it's going to be SDL2, and we can just do it in one line. Return CCollisionRect. So yeah, if you can just do it like this without creating it, since it's just one line of code here, it will save time. Okay, so for now we can leave it as it is. This CCollisionRect class will still modify a few bits, definitely, but yeah. Now we can go to sprite H. And actually copy this. I mean, cut it and paste it here as well. Why does it by default when you create a class? And include collision rectangle to CSprite. Now what we're gonna do is change the constructor of CSprite, which is going to give us a lot of errors, which we'll have to fix since we create a lot of sprites, and well, not a lot, but quite a few. So we're gonna have to change all those sprites. See, collision rectangle. You're gonna pass in that collision rectangle. So you'll be able to specify. And you're gonna go. No, don't make it a point. And let's just call it past collision rect. And we can just copy it. We can create a private one here. So we'll start the collision rectangle for each sprite. Each sprite will have its own rectangle of collision. Okay. Now we can go to CSprite and past collision rect. And obviously we still didn't set it up. Set it up here. Oops. So that's going to be C call rectangle. Alright, so now we have each sprite has a rectangle. Now let's fix all the problems it's gonna give us since we changed the constructor. So you can just simply run it and spot all the errors. We have quite a few warnings, which we'll fix eventually. Okay, trunk. CSprite, there you go, see. So what we're gonna do is Now we can define the collision here. See collision rectangle, and we open the brackets and we can just pass in the values of collision. So it's 0, 0, 100, 100. 0, 0 will be top left of the sprite, and 100 is width and height. So we can actually do 0, 0, 43 and 145, which I'm taking those two values from here. So it will do collision along the whole trunk. And we don't want any collision with the crown. So as I said, if you don't want any collision, you will still pass in collision rect, but you don't pass any values, and it will just set them to 0 by itself. Alright, so the trunk and this is set. Small, obviously, Bob. We do want collision around Bob, so collision 0, 0, 100, 120. So 0, 0, we don't do those values. 0, 0 will be from top left, as I said, of the image, not of, this is top left of window, and those are top left of an image, and width and height is the same. Okay, it's done. What else? And there's one more, grass, which we don't want any collision for that, so we're just gonna pass in empty collision rectangle. Okay, let's run it. But now we're just gonna create rectangles. We're still not detecting collision against them. But now they are existing there, but we don't know exactly if they are in correct position. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna draw them. We're gonna draw where the collision is for debugging purposes. And we could just make it like toggle, make a key that toggles like debug view. But for now, we're just gonna draw them and see where they actually are, because definitely they're not gonna be in correct positions. So what we're going to do is we're going to get an image which I already drew. Simple transparent rectangle, those bits are transparent. And yeah, we're just gonna draw those rectangles around where the collision is. So we can just add it inside our data folder. We can actually just create a folder like debug images, or debug, it's called debug folder, which will hold the collision box. Maybe we'll add more images for debugging later, but for now we're just gonna have collision box. Okay, so we have collision box. Now we need to do a few changes to the sprite then, since we need to keep track of another image, another texture, but it's going to be collision image. Let's just call it that. And we're going to do the same thing as we did for image. So collision image equals null. You can just copy that actually. And just replace image. And if couldn't load, collision image. Just like that. Finally, we're going to draw this inside draw function. We can just copy that. Collision rect. There's no crop, so no.